Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome to the Oriental Café, a podcast where we will sit at the same table to explore the fascinating worlds of Egyptian dance, personal empowerment, and khalas, life. I'm your host, Joana Saahirah, world-renowned Oriental dancer, teacher, choreographer, and author, the creator of the pioneering Joana Saahirah's World and Joana Saahirah's Online Dance School. I will meet you at the Oriental Café every 2 weeks, alone or with a guest, sharing intimate yet universal conversations. In agreement or disagreement, we will create bridges and inspire each other, because the world is only one, and so is our human soul. Ready to fall in love? Yalla bina! Officially opening a new episode of the Oriental Café podcast with another very special guest. And soon enough, you're going to understand why. We have worked together. We have collaborated in different things. Mr. George Sawa, an Egyptian-born musician, teacher, researcher, author, eyebrow master, and so much more. Exactly. So for the listeners who are going to watch this episode on YouTube, you have a treat, because you're going to see my guest doing the eyebrow dance. For the ones who are just listening to us in the audio platforms, run to YouTube and check it, because it's worth watching. Welcome, ya Ustaz. Welcome. Ahlan wa sahlan.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure to have you on board in my podcast. We are going to dive a little bit into your world, into your books, into your vision of Arabic music and Arabic dance. And I usually start by allowing my guest to introduce himself or herself in their own words right now. As you well know, as artists, we keep evolving. And at least this is how I see it. We redefine ourselves many times throughout time. So I would like you to make the following exercise. Look at yourself right now. And how do you describe who you are and what you do in this moment?
In this moment, I'm very happy to be with you and with your friends and students. Great pleasure. And I'm also lucky to have been born at the end of the golden era of music and dance in Egypt. I was born in 1947. And then, I had seen the most beautiful movies of showing Sanya Gamal, Naima Akif, Tahe Karyoka. I was very, very lucky that way.
Have you gone back to Egypt recently?
Last time, 2006. It's been a long time, yeah.
A long time. How has Egypt changed? This was not in the program of the episode at all. But now that you mentioned your origins and that you mentioned Egypt, how do you see Egypt today in opposition to the Egypt of your childhood? Is there a big difference?
Yeah, a big difference. The music is faster. The songs are much shorter. They're not as beautiful, artistic, and complicated, sophisticated like the music of Sombati and Abdul-Wahab and Zakariya Ahmed. But, time changes and people change, and people don't have time to listen to an hour and a half of Om Kolthoum singing. They want something for 3 minutes to jump and dance and be done with it.
Well, people still listen to Om Kolthoum in Egypt and in other countries of North of Africa. Just recently, we went back to Morocco for a few days with the family. And in Essaouira, in a city by the sea that we love very much, it's a beautiful city in the Medina, in the old part of the city, I caught an old gentleman listening to an Om Kolthoum just the way it's meant to be listened to. Totally focused, totally in presence. A Moroccan man. And I asked him, hey, Yani, what's the thing about Om Kolthoum? He says, no, هو ده الفن, Yani. This is the real art, and I am here enjoying it. There is nothing better I can do. And that was in Morocco.
Yes.
A few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's a convergence of many, many things. She was trained by the Mashaykh. Her father was a sheikh. So she was trained in the Mushahat ad-Diniya that praised the Prophet Muhammad, a very Sufi saint. She chanted the Holy Quran, and she had good patrons. She had wonderful poets, wonderful composers, wonderful performers, and an audience. She had everything. And then the art, I mean, she was there for like 60 years almost at the top. Yeah.
And she had the perfect timing as well, politically speaking. I mean, all the factors gathered to make the Om Kolthoum that we now know, and the icon, all the factors working for her, for sure. Now, I'm going to go into the list of questions that I've created for the lineup, but I'm pretty sure we will go astray. All right, because one answer pushes another question, and there is a lot in this podcast that I cannot plan. So let's go back to all the years of your work in the field of Arabic music, mostly, especially playing the qanun, the instrument, one of the most beautiful instruments in Arabic music, and also collaborating with dance, Arabic dance. I want you to look back and tell me what is the best and the worst that you have learned from this field, from working in this field. If you could make like a balance, a revision, what is the best you have taken from it and also the worst you have learned from it, the good and the bad? What would that be?
The good is that I had wonderful teachers in Alexandria. I had the last group of wonderful qanun players. And I forgot, I have a book to show you here. This is a double edition in English and in Arabic about my teachers and their teachers, including a letter signed by Kolthoum inviting Selim Sarwa of Damascus to come join her band in the early 70s. Because Abdul Saleh died, the famous qanun player. And he said to her, get Selim Sarwa if I die. So I have a letter here with her handwriting inviting him.
Wow.
So I summarized 326 ornaments on the qanun.
A treatise on qanun musical ornaments. What we're going to do is we're going to post all the references of your books in the show notes. So whoever is interested, they can check. That's beautiful. They can check the references to your books. But now let's go back to the best and the worst. So the best, Yani, every time we speak about this, you mention your teachers. So I know this is something dear to your heart. And that time in Alexandria, am I right? Where you started to study the qanun, and those first teachers who passed on not only the technique, but also the love and the respect for the art. Would that be the best you have taken from all these years of work in this field?
Yes, they were very poor. They were paid really badly, but they gave all they could. They were so generous. Mustafa Kamil and Milad Mansour especially. They gave me so much. So kind, so kind. I wish I stayed another 20 years with them. Correct
me if I'm wrong. Now, when I hear you speaking about your teachers, I go back to my musicians in Cairo. And one of the things that I remember about my musicians is that devotion and passion for music. Although they earned a good money because we worked a lot, so it was a good living. But I knew that even if we were not working so much, they would still play with a lot of passion, a lot of devotion. And by the way, it is known that in Cairo, musicians gather after work in coffee shops and public places, waiting for gigs, of course. I mean, sometimes a gig comes up in the middle of the night, that's Cairo, but also to gather and to play together. The joy of creating art, independently of how much you're getting paid. I associate this specific attitude with Egyptian musicians. I have not seen this attitude in any other kind of musician, and I've worked with musicians from different parts of the world, but not like Egyptians. What do you think that is?
They're also very humble. They're very humble and they play extremely sophisticated music. And they don't think of it as sophisticated. It just happens because they're surrounded by it. And that's basically it. And the more knowledgeable, the more humble they are because they know this art is very difficult.
Mazboot, correct. Yes, exactly. Also because so many of them, at least the ones I worked with, they were born into the medium and they grew up in the medium, right? I mean, my accordionist had a musician for a father, so he learned with his father. He went to the weddings, the Beledi weddings in the streets, in the neighborhoods with his father. He learned how to play from his father. His father was already an apprentice from his father, so the grandfather. So these are generations and generations of musicians who learn from each other, very frequently from their own family.
Yes.
And everything is so familiar. They breed and eat music. So as you were saying, something that is very complex for us, for them it's simple. It's not a big deal because it's so familiar. It's what they do. It's what they've always done. So you can tell from an Egyptian musician exactly who are the biggest artists and the most talented and the most knowledgeable through humbleness. As you were saying, they're very humble, yes, because they're used to it. It's fluid, it's organic,
Very
you know?
much, very much.
And it's just the best. I have mentioned this to you before. I mean,
Yes.
I am biased, but I do think, and I'm not being nice, I'm being honest, that Egyptian musicians are the most talented and the most generous. From what I have known, from my experience, there is
Yes.
something about the culture, I don't know, that makes them particularly inspired and particularly generous.
As long as they use the language they know, which is, classical Arabic music, Saidi music, Egyptian pop music. When they venture in Western music, the result are half and half. Sometimes they do well, they meld it nicely. Sometimes it's a disaster.
Mm.
I'm talking from the point of view of being an Egyptian who play Egyptian music and Arabic music, but also had 14 years of piano training. So I know Western music. I know good and bad Western music and how our Egyptian musician and Arab musician picked up some good and some bad.
Because you think there is a specific sensibility for Western music and for Eastern music?
Yes, and I think Farid al-Atrash was the most successful. He had the sensitivity to meld nicely Latino music, Italian music, and Egyptian music. He did very well.
Yeah, but not often. Not many can manage to travel between those two worlds, right?
Correct.
Now, you've mentioned the best of all these years of career in Arabic music and dance. Now, what is the worst? What is the worst thing you've learned or something that perhaps you wish were different? What was that?
Well, I wish I'd spent more time with my teachers in Kanoum, but I had to immigrate to Canada because the political situation was very, very bad in Egypt. People are just disillusioned. Everybody wanted to leave. So this is something I regret, but what can I do? And then coming to Canada, you don't have the best musicians. The best musicians stay home. They stay in Cairo, they stay in Aleppo, they stay in Beirut. Why come here and play one night a week with an audience that does not really appreciate what you do? They drink and they talk as you play. And you're surrounded by musicians who are really third rate. They're amateur who just pick up a drum. I'm an Arab, I can play the drum. No, you're not. You can be an Arab, but the drum is very difficult. How to interact with the music. It's a dialogue. It's not just doom and tack. Your pattern changes as the melody changes. And I've played with drummers who get off the beat, who always try to drown you, play louder, and have 2 or 3 mics for the drum. Oh my God. And you cannot hear the qanun because they bang so loudly. And this is not Egyptian drumming. Egyptian drumming is very gentle. You put the right ornament in the right place. If they put the wrong ornament or they put the syncopation in the wrong place, they put you out. You can't play. Or singers who are out of tune. They sing and then their voice goes down. Or dancers, you work very hard with the dancer. And the day of the concert, oh, I don't like it, I don't feel it. What shall I do? We rehearsed it. You have to dance to it. So you don't
I think, in terms of Egyptian music played in the West, let's go there. My experience of it happened in festivals. So regular work with musicians for me was in Cairo. Outside of Cairo, I did festivals, which is the market available, So I danced with a few orchestras in different Western countries, some of them with a mix of Egyptian and Western musicians, and some of them with purely Western musicians. And one thing that I've noticed that it's usually lacking, it's a notion of tempo. There is a very specific, I don't even have the word for it.
The feeling.
Yeah, it's a rhythm beneath the rhythms that we are using. Yani, when we speak about Egyptian music, we have different rhythms, al-Maksum, wal-Fallahi, wal-Zar, wal-Masmoudi, any rhythm, but beneath these rhythms, there is a specific timing, a specific fluidity, a specific flow.
Fluidity and flow, exactly.
Yes. And that is very, very much an Egyptian sensibility you don't find outside of Egypt. Even if the musicians, yani the percussionists, if we're talking about rhythm, even if they have a good technique, meaning they know the rhythms, they know how to ornament, they know when they should play the doom and the tak and the ka, and everything is very well studied, but they don't have that flow. They don't have. There is an underlying rhythm that is purely Egyptian that is not there. And it changes the experience completely.
Of course.
Completely.
Yeah, and some people play too fast, too loud. The drum is not kung fu. You're not fighting. You're playing drum gently. The doom should be gentle and resounding. The tak should be right there and gentle. And a lot of Western musicians just bang the drum. It's ugly. It's not nice.
Because I think, they associate percussion, and I think this is a very Western thing. We associate percussion with aggressivity.
Yes.
It's aggressive. It must be aggressive. It must be loud. It must be sharp. It must be a staccato, but staccato on your face. And whereas in Egypt, we don't see percussion as aggressive. It's almost melody. Yani, there is a melody to percussion.
Yes.
So Egyptian musicians feel it and they do it as if they were singing, as if there was a melody beneath it. And
so
again,
so true.
Sensibility. It's a different sensibility.
Yes.
And it's hard to transpose it. It's hard to make it when you were not educated within that flow. Yes. When you were not educated with that sensibility. So musicians get very good technically, but the final result is not quite the same as the result of Egyptians. And I'm not even speaking only about Western musicians. I'm even speaking about Lebanese. I remember that my first contract was in Lebanon, in Beirut. It was not in Egypt. And I had my first band in Beirut, the top-notch musicians in Beirut, okay? Very different from the Egyptian musicians I later on worked with in Cairo. Yes. And I'm not saying they're better or worse. What I'm saying is that for Egyptian dance, Raqs Sharqi, there is no comparison. Forget about it. And maybe Lebanese people will get mad at me. I'm sorry, guys. This is my preference and it is my own sensibility that even the top-notch Lebanese musicians I worked with could not give me the experience of the Egyptian musicians I worked with in Egypt.
Yeah. A different feel to it.
Yeah. Yes, a different feeling. And I believe that Egyptian musicians have a kind of warmth, a kind of passion, which goes beyond the technique. It goes beyond what you know or what you don't know or what kind of training you had as a musician. It's something that runs in the blood. One of my first musicians, a very funny guy, he used to say that we are like that because we catch a lot of sun. So we warm up, our blood warms up. Of course, it's a joke, but Yani, it's a possible justification. It's a possible answer as to why that kind of warmth and passion is so unique of Egyptian musicians. Now, let's go directly to the qanun, which is your instrument of election. It's the instrument that you focused in, the instrument that you mastered above everything else. Why the qanun?
The sound, when I was a child and I hear it on the radio, it was like magic. I just run to the radio and I listen. Wow, the qanun. And then ding dong, this is Cairo. And they cut the qanun to tell the news. And I was so frustrated because they didn't finish the taqsim. But the sound is truly amazing. Whoever invented that instrument is a genius. And there is a 14th century manuscript, and it mentioned the qanun is a strange instrument. Even if an ant run on a string, it will give you a beautiful sound. And I'll show you a picture of that qanun from the Mamluk era, the 14th century. Lovely, lovely picture. Just give me a second. Here it is.
Oh, yes. Yes, it's a beautiful picture.
Mamluk drawing. And it's sort of magic. The sound is magic. Even if I play one note, ding and ding and ding and ding and ding and ding and ding, ding, the sound is so full, so beautiful. So beautiful.
Is it a sound made for Tarab?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think?
All Tarab. And I only play Tarab music. That's why I don't get many jobs, but I don't care. I don't need the money. I don't need the audience unless it's Tarab music.
I mean, every instrument can produce
Tarab, of course.
the experience of Tarab, and by Tarab we mean transcendence, we mean an experience that goes beyond our rational mind, our physical body, a kind of a meditative, ecstatic experience, almost like a prayer of some sort.
It is.
But there are some sounds that are particularly inducing of Tarab. I agree that the qanun is one of them. What makes an exceptional qanun player?
Someone who is not harsh with his plucking, who has a butterfly position, not like this, not like you play the piano, but like this, and gently play the string. Don't push them too hard. You will not get a good sound. Be very gentle and fly over the strings. If you have a good technique, you don't think of technique anymore. You just fly with the music. So Abdul Saleh was a genius. Kamal Abdullah is my favorite qanun player, favorite taqsim. That's how they played. Good taste. Don't have a lot of no. Don't rush. What I call hashish music, stoned music.
Yes.
Yeah.
Aywa. A kind of softness.
Yes.
A kind of softness that comes from within, right?
Yeah.
Again, the sensibility, because you can have the technique and you can know exactly what to do with your hands, but if you don't have the sensibility, the softness, the tenderness,
tenderness. Let me just show you a very brief example. A brief example of gentleness and tarab.
Yes.
I won't take long. I know we have a lot to cover. Can you see a good shot now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm
Perfect.
just going to play one note. Gentle, then taxi.
جميل جميل جمال. Beautiful. It's
Sound is
beautiful.
just.
Very beautiful. It is, as we were saying, a question of not only technique, but yes, softness. And
Yes.
I would even also add, there is a quality to Egyptian music and a quality to the Qanun specifically that is very feminine. It's not masculine, it's not aggressive, it's not doing too much, it's just necessary. And also with this ability to surrender, to enjoy, and to let oneself go. You know, you
Yes.
mentioned the hashish, Yani, and it
Yeah.
is a common joke amongst musicians because literally a lot of musicians smoke hashish, at least in Egypt. I'm not sure outside of Egypt, but in Egypt for sure. And because the experience of playing and even the experience of dance, if it's done right, it's like being high on drugs. I don't
Yes.
take drugs, but I don't need because I get high with the music. And I found out that good Egyptian musicians and good dancers, they have the ability to get high, to evade themselves, to
Yes.
travel through the
Exactly.
sound, through the
Exactly.
movement. That is part of the Egyptian sensibility too, that you don't find so much in the Western world. You know, we're too much in control. We
I
want
know.
to have control and we want to understand everything. You know, I have to understand what's happening. Where do I go next? What's going to happen? How is this going to sound? There is a different way of doing things. I personally learned from my musicians in Cairo, which tells you don't need to know everything. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to flow with the music. You have to fly with the music. And like you, I don't need hashish to be stoned. Music make me stoned.
Exactly. You
And
get
if the,
high, you get
and,
drunk with the
and
music.
if you have a nice dancer, I can get stoned even more. Just looking at her, she inspires me, I inspire her. And it's beautiful, beautiful.
Is
It's
it
worth
different?
millions of dollars.
Yeah. Playing for yourself or playing solo as a musician is different than playing for a dancer.
Of course, of course.
How is it
Be-
different?
yeah, because you inspire her motions and she inspires you. And I can play Taksim for 20 minutes non-stop if I have a good dancer with me. And I just don't know. I have no idea what I'm going to do, what I'm going to start, what's going to be in the middle, what's going to be at the end. It's all inspiration from the dancer.
How does the dancer inspire you? Are we talking about specific movements this person is suggesting, a specific pause? I mean, how does that reflect in terms of practical, right? Practical terms, what do you mean?
Yeah, her movement, her shoulder, her hands, her fingers, her feet, the foot motion, the symmetry, the nice smile, the joy that she's dancing to my music, the joy that I'm playing for her dance. And it's like a love poem between me and the dancer. It's very pretty, very beautiful.
Because one of the best things about working with musicians, especially the Egyptian musicians that I got to work with, was precisely almost the telepathic communication
Yes.
that happens. And it will always amaze me because, yes, sometimes I would give direct signals to my musicians, right? More of that, less of that, and stop, go faster, a mistake, anything. So I was communicating with the orchestra all the time. But even when I was not directly communicating, A few, not all of them, but a few, the ones who knew me the best and who felt perhaps a deeper connection. My tabal, my accordionist, my violinist, just to name a few, they would read my thoughts. It's like we became one. It was
Yes.
very strange.
Yeah. Lovely harmony.
Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah.
And they would alter what they had in mind because of my movements. And
Yes.
I would alter what I had in mind because of their musical suggestions and because of their energy. And it is a truly exceptional experience. It is hard to describe with words.
Yes.
You know, and I'm usually good with words, but I have a hard time finding words to describe what it feels like to dance with an orchestra who is in tune with you,
Yes.
with musicians who are in tune with the dancer. It's a very, very specific and extraordinary experience. I haven't found the words for it.
I can mention two experiences I did with two dancers. One is Lulu of Brazil. I did a taksim for her. We never rehearsed. We had just played and she danced. And another one, Claudia Khalida. Claudia, also known as Claudia Oriental Dance in Montreal. I did a taksim for her and she won first prize. It was magic. On stage was magic between me and Claudia.
How were those two experiences special? What was the difference? What made them different?
I cry when I watch it.
Oh,
of the
lie.
Tarab of dance and Tarab of music and the harmony between us. It was unbelievable. Yeah.
It's an energetic connection. It's an emotional connection, right?
Yeah.
That is beautiful. Now, I would like to go a little bit more into the contrast, because you are an Egyptian musician living in Canada, in the West. Canada is as Western as it comes. You cannot get more Western than Canada, I think. So you are stuck between two worlds and two cultures. You are in the middle. First of all, I would like to ask you a polemic question. Do you think it makes sense to divide East and West? This is a question that was raised by Edward Said, the famous author of Orientalism.
Yeah.
I once watched a conference by Edward Said where he raised this question. I find it very interesting that someone decided there was an East and there was a West. And the world is divided between East and West. Does that division make sense? What do you think?
In some ways, yes. We are a very different people. Very different. Egyptian likes to joke. Egyptians like to flirt. And if you flirt, people sometimes take it the wrong way. They get upset. In Egypt, I love it.
Yes, it's all fun. دم خفيف يعني. مش كده؟
يا قطة يا
مش
بطة يا
كده؟
حلوة.
Yes, exactly. And nothing is very serious يعني. Nothing
No.
is very serious.
I'll tell you an example. I was 6 years old, and there was this Spanish French teacher who didn't understand Egyptian culture at all. And going to the Egyptian movies, when you like a lady, you go like this.
أيوة.
And she had a beautiful husky. She was very pretty, sort of plump, as Egyptian like their women to be, and very husky voice, very sexy husky voice. And I was only 6 years old. So I went like this to her, meaning I like you. She slapped me on the face. I'm a child, 6 years old. No sense of humor. No sense of humor whatsoever.
That is hilarious. I love that. Oh, poor little boy. But that is so funny. I like that. Yes.
I came to Canada in 1970. It was very, very Anglo. People are very polite. At the same time, they're very generous, very kind, but very stiff. So, I mean, standard, when you see a girl with a bit of red on her cheeks, say, oh my goodness, I see flowers opening up on your cheeks of every color and every kind. Instead of being happy, They think I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. They don't know how to flirt. They don't know how to accept beautiful, embellished poetry. We are the master of love poetry and flirting. You
Yes.
cannot be the Arabs, whether they.
And
Yeah.
also of sociability, right? I mean, what I miss the most, or one of the things I miss the most about living in Egypt, is the social communicative nature of Egyptian society. So a lot of that flirting comes from the fact that people like to connect. They like to speak with each other. They like to spend time with each other. It's not necessarily because you love the woman to death and you're ready to marry her. It's
No.
you're creating a rapport. You're creating a
Yes.
connection. You are creating some sort of interaction, Yani. But
If
in the West, we take it very seriously, right? Yeah, this
you
must be
sit in a
serious.
bus or a tramway or a streetcar, everybody talks to everybody. They don't know each other. They start talking. They're not repressed in any way. So this is
Actually,
what I miss about Egypt. It's just unbelievable. But if you're
this
Egyptian, you can melt them away. You can make them become Egyptian.
uh,
I have a lot of Anglo friends around here. They're lovely people. Just have to break the barrier at the beginning.
this is actually one of the difficulties of training. I wouldn't say maybe not difficulties, but certainly challenge. One of the challenges of training Western women in Egyptian dance, it's precisely the attitude, right? Our Western attitude is too stiff, too serious, too heavy, too worried about, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Is this good? Is this bad? We have a hard time entering the feeling and the flow and the lightness of Egyptian sensibility. And that is a difficulty that I believe most Western women face when they start to study Egyptian dance, is that they clearly very fast understand that learning the movements is the easy part. Then adopting a mentality and an attitude which is not theirs because it belongs to a culture far away from them, that's the real challenge. And that can take time. It can take years to integrate, to understand, and then to integrate. Now, what are the main differences? Now that you have spent quite a few years in Canada, so you have that experience of civilized Western country, whatever that means, and you come from Egypt. What are the main differences between living in Egypt and living in Canada?
Living in Egypt, you cannot sleep at night from the noise.
Uh-huh.
The radios are on, the TV is on, people talk to each other. Very hard to sleep. Here in Canada, it's paradise. I sleep like a baby. There is no noise, no traffic. And when I talk to my sister in Alexandria, it's non-ending noise. People using the horn, kalax, beep, 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 all day and all night. Yeah. But
Egypt,
at the same
Cairo
time,
specifically, Cairo is the city that never sleeps.
I know, it's too much. It's too much. And of course, all the fumes from the cars. And, as a child, I used to have severe asthma. So that does not help at all.
At one point, I decided to go, I don't know what went into my head. I must have been crazy. I said, I'm going to run outdoors. This is the worst idea you can have in the middle of Cairo. At the time, I was living in Maadi. So I went to the Corniche early in the morning. I thought, okay, this is a good idea. Instead of going to the gym, I'm going to run in the Corniche by the Nile. Nice. So like 6 a.m., crazy time, right? Because I'm finishing my work at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. At 6 a.m., I'm up running in the Corniche. Of course, the harassing, the honking, disaster, hell.
Oh, yeah.
But the worst thing was that I ran, I went back home, I went about my day, I went to perform. At night, I could hardly speak. I had cough because of the pollution.
Yes.
I had cough. I had my lungs completely blocked.
Yes.
And then I realized, oh my God, we are breathing so much smoke here.
Oh, yeah.
I did not realize it until that moment. Now, There is also a question of what it means to work in Egypt and what it means to work in the West. I can speak from the perspective of a dancer, but from a musician's perspective, what are the main differences between being a working musician in Egypt and being a working musician in a Western country? What do you think?
Well, you're surrounded in Egypt by very professional musicians who know the culture. You don't need to say anything, just play. Here, they want to have the notation. They want to be very stiff. You cannot change anything in the middle. It's written this way, you do it this way. Then have to be flexible. Change. The audience is changing. The audience smiles in a different way. You calibrate the audience. You look at them, then you know what to play. And they don't have this sensitivity.
And also the self-confidence, because in order to improvise and to change the composition, to play within, you need to be confident in your skills and in your knowledge of the music. What I find is that a lot of times Western musicians, they want to do it, but they're afraid they will mess up because you need to be very secure in your knowledge of the music to do that efficiently.
And some dancers in the West told me the same thing. They don't want to go away from the script, not to offend the audience or offend the dance or do anything that's not beautiful. And when you follow the script, you realize it's too it's not natural anymore. Sort of pushed. Yeah.
But that also has to do with insecurity.
I think so.
Yes, insecurity about not only the dance skills, but insecurity about the culture. If you're not completely familiar with the culture surrounding the dance, you're afraid you're going to be disrespectful. You're afraid you're going to do something that is totally out of context, and you're going to expose your ignorance. You're afraid that if you go astray and if you let loose and improvise, you're going to do something weird, something that goes against what is supposed to be done. People will accuse you of cultural appropriation, cultural disrespect, especially nowadays, with the woke movement and so much complexity around what it means to appropriate a different culture, what it means to represent a different culture. Just recently, I read a book of an author, an American author, who wrote, I'm not going to make publicity of the book, but I'm going to speak about it because it's an interesting example. She wrote about the history of a Mexican mother and son who run away from Mexico because their family is killed by a cartel, a drug cartel. That's the plot. The entire family is killed, and the mother and the son survive, and they fly away from Mexico, and they go into United States to find refuge and safety. So the author was highly criticized because she's not Mexican, and she wrote about Mexico, and she wrote about a Mexican experience, the drug cartels and how it works. So what I find is that in Egyptian music and dance in the West, a lot of Western dancers are terrified of being accused of disrespecting the culture, not knowing the culture, doing something free, improvising, changing, and then going astray so far and so far beyond what is expected that they are judged, accused, criticized. So they prefer to stay safe and they play by the book.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily because they're not creative. It's because they're afraid to mess up. They say, okay, I'm not sure. So not being sure, I'm going to keep the script.
Yeah, it's true. So you have to really thank the dancers in the West to make this tradition alive, because we're fighting it in Egypt. Dancing, is haram. Music is haram. All this nonsense. So the Western dancers, they keep alive this beautiful tradition, and they're also very careful not to offend. So you really have to thank them for it.
Yes, most dancers are. Yes, I agree. I agree. And there is a lot of contribution from the West to Egyptian
Yes.
music and dance. I also agree. I agree with that. We misunderstand a lot of things, but we also contribute a lot,
Of
for
course.
sure. Because in Egypt, as you mentioned, music and dance, especially Oriental, Sharqi, there is a difficult, polemic relationship with those subjects in Egypt. It is haram, it is aib, it is transgressive. It is not the kind of thing people want in their family. Yani, I love dance, but not my daughter, not my wife, not my sister. I love musicians, they're so cute. Not my husband, not my son, not my brother. No, these people, yani, aib, haram. So it's loved, but at the same time, it's despised.
Yeah.
And it always blew my mind. While I was working in Egypt and observing this contradictory relationship with music and dance, I always wondered, oh my God, it must be difficult to live like this, because music and dance, Egyptian music and dance, are a part of Egyptian life.
Of course.
Egyptians cannot live without their music and their dance.
You can't have a wedding without the belly dance and music.
Exactly. But at the same time, you don't want your wife to be an Oriental dancer. You don't want your mom. I mean, if you want to offend someone in Egypt, as you well know, you will call someone Ibn Ra'asa, ya am.
Exactly.
Ibn Ra'asa. Taban. Tamin. Of course. It's very offensive. You like the baladi. You like the bint al-balad in me. Don't
love
push
it.
me. I will go there very, very quickly. Huh? أنا بنت
Okay.
البلد يا عم.
أيوة.
أيوة. Yes. So it is interesting to observe this contradictory relationship, you know, and it is interesting to observe that it also creates Egyptian music and dance just as they are. There is a spark, there is a spiciness, there is a friction that also comes from the fact that Egyptians love and hate their music and their dance. There is a friction, there is a certain fire that comes from that contradiction. Do you think that contradiction will ever go away?
No, it's been going on from the 8th century in Arabia. Oh yeah.
Maybe it will not go away.
And back then it was the power of the musicians, because the musicians were very well paid, had a lot of power, and the theologians were annoyed that the caliph would enjoy the company of musicians, to drink, to eat, and listen to music and watch dance, and not listen to the theologian. I mean, honestly, if I have a choice, I'll go for the music and the dance.
Come on. Come on. No comments. No
Yeah.
comments.
Yeah.
Let's go directly into your latest book then. From
Yeah.
the contradiction, the contradictory relationship Egyptians have in regards to their music and dance, we're going to jump into this book. So for the listeners who are watching and listening on YouTube, you're going to see me holding Mr. George's new book. For the ones who are only listening in Spotify, in Apple Podcasts, you're going to find the link to this new book in the show notes. Let's talk a little bit about this book. And before I read a couple of quotes from it, I want to ask you, what made you want to write this book?
My friend in Germany, Dr. Neubauer, he's a bit older than me and an absolute genius, suggested that I translate it. Because not only does it talk about the music of the Levant, but also North Africa and Morocco, which is all the way west, and Andalusia. One of the few sources that talk about Andalusian art and Andalusian dance. On top of this, the author said most books don't talk about the dance, they only talk about music. In this music treatise, I'm going to add the dance because the dance is very important. And there's 2 chapters at the end that discuss the dance, and also it uses an Egyptian music dictionary that I translated that has a chapter on dance that's erased in the manuscript. You cannot see it. It's a blank page. So he, back then, in the 13th century, had access to the real treatise and said, Ibn Tahan in the 11th century Cairo said this and this about the dance. And there is another book by Ibn Khordazbeh, who was Iranian, in the 10th century, who talked about the dance. And that work is lost, but reproduced in that particular book in the 13th century. Then it tells you about the modes used, the rhythm used, the music instruments. A lot of instruments that were not used anymore. The props the dancers used. The sword. The sword is not a Hollywood invention. Dancers danced with swords. And also flask of wine. And I sent you a photo from Iraq with two dancers dancing with flask of wine.
Yes.
And they dance on bowls. They danced the kind of hobby horse dance, where the women especially would mount a horse made of wood and dance woman against woman with swords, pretend that they are horsemen fighting. Yeah. So these are the kind of dance used. And then they talk about solo dance, which is easy. Duo dance is difficult because you're going to compare two dancers dancing at the same time. Ensemble dance, where they have to be in sync. And then some of them danced with music instrument. They danced with the tambourine. They danced with the claquette. And they danced with cymbals. They danced with the drum. It is so rich with information about the dancer did.
I love the title, and I would like to ask you about the title first. The Ear's Pleasure and the Science of Listening to Music. First question, what is the importance of the ear's pleasure? Is that important?
Very important. Music with Tarab give pleasure to the ears and the heart. It's that simple. Lots of pleasure.
Is listening a science?
How to listen properly, behave properly, not to praise the music at the wrong part of the song. There are places where you say Allah, aid, repeat, like Om Kolthoum. But you have to know when to say it, not just anywhere. And don't talk when there is music being played. It's a no-no. It's very impolite to the musician, to the dancer, and to the audience when you talk. Like you go to any Arab restaurant, the people talk, and the music is playing. No, that's not right.
Yes.
And also the sign of listening to music is to know your music theory, know the maqamat, know the iqa'at, appreciate. That will help you appreciate the music. So it becomes the science of listening to music. An informed listener.
Another question that was not in my plans to ask you, but an important one. Why do you think there isn't much literature surrounding Egyptian dance, Oriental dance? There is very few. I remember that when I moved to Egypt, even before I moved to Egypt, when I traveled to Egypt the first times just to study and to get to know the country, I searched for books on Egyptian dance by Egyptians. I said, okay, this is Egyptian dance. It's a national treasure, independently of the relationship with the dance. It's something that is very obvious and present in the culture. There must be many books written about it. There was nothing. By Egyptian authors, there was nothing. I went to the Library of Alexandria because I thought I will find, oh my God, I will find so many books about Egyptian dance here. I did not by Egyptian authors. There is recently a short book, I'm going to mention it in the show notes, by an Egyptian author about Beledi dance. It's a little book that was published by the American University Press.
Beautiful.
In Cairo. But that's the first that I know of by an Egyptian author. Why hasn't Egyptian dance been considered an academic subject till now? Because this is the reason why we don't have books written by Egyptians about Egyptian dance. It's because it's not an academic subject. It's not worth researching and writing about. It's not even respectful to write about it. Why is that?
Because they look at dance, the dancer is, especially the lower caste of dancers, they're looked as, whores and prostitutes. And the drummer act as a pimp. You want to sleep with the dancer, you go through the drummer, he's her pimp. So to write something,
Really?
I mean, the lower class.
I did not know about that association.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I was distracted a long time. Okay. Oh, really? Tell me more.
Oh, yeah. So for them to write something about dancers, it's a terrible thing. And I remember somewhere in Palestine, a dancer went through the border and they asked her what is her profession. She said, dancer. So the soldier told the copyist, right, prostitute, qahba.
Oh,
yeah.
La, really?
So for anybody to write a book about dancer, that's a no-no. But I know of two instances. There is a book about the dancers of Cairo. It's a short bio about each dancers. I don't have a copy of it, but it's in Dar al-Kutub, the dancers of Egypt.
By an Egyptian author?
Yeah, an Egyptian lady who wrote it.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
If you go to, there is a Dutch lady, I don't have her book. She talked about Muhammad Ali's street dancers. She may quote that particular.
Oh, yes,
book.
you're talking about Karen van Nieuwkerk.
Yes.
I interviewed her. I have a webinar with Karen about Trade Like Any Other. That's the book you're mentioning.
Yes. In the bibliography, she probably mentions that other book in Arabic.
Oh, okay.
Also, Mahmoud Reda, bless his soul, wrote a book about inside the temple of the dance.
Yes.
His experience as a choreographer and dancer.
Yes.
But you're right, there are very few. And if you go to biographical dictionaries, Zurikli Kahala, etc., you look at Farid al-Atrash, you find something. Kulthum, you find something. Thai Karyoka, nothing.
Yes.
Not even mentioned. And these are magnificent artists. Haram, because they move their bodies.
Yes.
Sex. Heaven forbids there is sex.
Yes. I think it's not even, it's not even the sex, because in Egyptian dance, you don't necessarily have that sexual aggressive note, but it is a sensual dance, which is a different subject. And that sensuality, which is not openly sexual, it's more disturbing than the sexuality in itself. Because when something is openly sexual, you already know what it is. You know how to label it: haram, aib, awful, horrible, obscene. You know how to call it. You have control over it and you understand it. But the sensuality of Egyptian dance, you cannot label it. You cannot define it. You cannot put it in a box. You cannot fully understand it. There is a mystery factor that makes it very dangerous and very alluring at the same time. I have found through observation that more than anything else bothers people and makes it dangerous. It's the unlabeled sensuality. It's this mysterious factor that people cannot explain. They cannot put in a box. That is very disturbing, especially in a society where people are not totally free and there are so many taboos in regards to everything. I mean, even the voice of a woman is haram in Islamic culture. If I sing in public, it's considered a provocation because I'm a woman. My voice is haram. Yani Kolthoum was dressed as a little boy when she accompanied her father in the Quranic recitation for those gigs, because it was not allowed for her to go as a little girl. Aib, yani, how is a little girl reciting the Quran?
Yeah.
How? مش معقول. It's not possible.
Exactly.
So if it is a boy, la walad, it's okay.
Yeah.
So they dress her as a little boy, and then it's fine. So what I find in Egyptian dance so fascinating is this, again, I don't even have words for it. It's not even sensuality. It's a mix between sensuality, emotion, instinct, something that it's very hard to put a label on. You cannot really describe it. You cannot really pin it down. You know, I tell you a funny story. You're going to love this. A few years ago in the summer, I bought myself some time and I went to Oxford in England, to Corpus Christi College, a beautiful old college where they do intensive courses, writing and literature and whatever. So I went for the summer, living the university life with very intelligent, very well-educated people, academic world. And I love that because I am a bookworm in the end, you know, I am a geek. So of course I love this part. And I did not say who I was and what I did. I did not mention it to anyone and people did not ask me and I was fine with it. I say, okay, I'm here to enjoy it. Somehow I must have mentioned it to one of my colleagues or a teacher. I don't know how it came out. The news spread in the college that I was an Oriental dancer.
Oh la la.
It was a scandal and people were nervous talking to me. And then the one who was managing, the person managing the college, the university, asked me if I could perform for them in the dining hall. But already the request came with so much nervousness and so much adrenaline. I felt if I perform, they're going to have a collective heart attack. So I'm going to spare them the problem and I'm going to say, no, thank you, because I'm here to study and enjoy myself. I didn't come for work. I didn't come for work. So
you should have a heart attack.
Collective, can you imagine ambulances and all the hustle and bustle? I said, no. I said, no, I don't want to cause a congestion. I don't want to cause a big problem. So the funny thing was that from the moment it was known what I did for a living, people got hysterical. The reaction was very funny to me, of course, because, you know, for me, it is normal. Yani, the same way you were describing Egyptian musicians, and they do the extraordinary with ease. Yani, what is the problem? What is the special thing? There's no,
Exactly.
because it's their life. Egyptian dance has been my life for 26 years. So it is normal. For me, everything is very normal, very easy, normal, fluid. I don't see what is the big point, Yani. But people react to it in very dramatic and funny ways. And I think part of it has to do with that unspeakable nature of Egyptian dance and of Egyptian music as well. There is a factor there which is magical, it is spiritual, it is beyond our rational understanding. It's instinctive, but it's also very emotional and very spiritual at the same time.
Yes.
And we cannot pin it down. We don't know what it is. We don't understand it. So people freak out. They cannot control this.
Very true.
And they freak out. And that is true of Egypt. That is true of the West as well. And I'm telling you this story, Oxford, England, amongst people who are educated, well-traveled, intelligent, civilized. What is your excuse then? You are not Yani Muhammad min Abbasiyya. You are someone who has the obligation to understand things. You are educated, you're civilized, you are an academic, and you have a heart attack. If I tell you I am an Oriental dancer, what's going on here? It's very interesting, very funny. I always find it fascinating, you know, how people react. And of course, Yani, from that point on, I was wearing the scarlet letter on my chest. I was marked for life. It was very funny. I'm used to it, so it's fine. I just laugh and I find it interesting. Now, let's dive a little bit into this last book, okay? So I'm going to read from it, and I have a
Sure.
couple of questions on the description of how a dancer should behave, right? Because as you mentioned, there are a couple of chapters dedicated to dancers specifically. There are chapters dedicated to music, musicians, how the music should be played, what makes a great music or a great musician. But there is also about dance. And this is what I am going to read. Okay. And then I have a couple of questions for you. The first thing the dancer needs is to enter properly with the rhythm. الدخول في الإيقاع. The entrance in the tempo, يعني in the rhythm. Then to have the suppleness of the sides of the body, grace and agility, good nature, to lift the dress while dancing and turning, the tranquility of the soul and courage to overcome fright, erect figure, strength of heart, calm looks, sprightliness and agility of the body, beautiful manner of speaking, dignified character, knowledge of melodies, melodic and rhythmic modes, and what constitutes good singing and good instrumental performance. Do you think this description is still up to date? Could we still describe what a professional Oriental dancer should be in this way? Or would you change something?
Well, it's very, very much like today, except back then they were very well trained, not only in dances, but also in music theory. So they knew the maqam, they knew the rhythmic mode, the iqaat, and all of these things. Egyptian dancers know it by their feel. She cannot tell you this is Masmoudi, this is Maqam Nahawand, but they know it by their sense and by their feel. The good thing about knowing your modes and the cadences, when to stop, is if and when a nasty musician plays a trick on you and make the cadence longer or shorter to put you off beat. So if you know enough music theory, you can say to the drummer, you can fool around all you want, but I'm in charge because I have knowledge. And I've known drummers who are upset at the dancer who does not want to date the drummer. So on stage, you do things to make her look bad. Musicians can be very nasty people. And there's a mention of that in the book, and how the dancer can circumvent nasty musicians, either singer or drummers. So
Yes.
knowledge is very important.
And musicians know when the dancer knows.
Yeah.
They know, and they feel, oh, I cannot mess around with this one.
Yeah, I mean,
They know.
the musician in Egypt know their livelihood depends on the dancer. She is the boss. You mess around with me, you're out.
That too, yes. But there are two aspects to it, right? I mean, once again, I'm resorting back to my experience, mostly with my band in Egypt, which was the group that was with me for the longest time. And there was the economic factor.
Yeah.
As you were saying, you're the boss, you're the one who's hiring and firing. So they know that they depend on you to put bread on the table, especially if they work with you most of the time, right? Which in a professional orchestra, for dancers who are working constantly, you have your own band. You don't work with different musicians. That's your orchestra. You don't change musicians. I changed my orchestra one time in 8 years, one time. So I had an initial smaller orchestra, and then when I got a contract in a bigger place where they paid better, I could afford better musicians and more musicians. So I changed. But other than that, I did not change. So they were the same musicians, and they knew they were working every day or practically every day. So that brings security, it brings an economic comfort, and they know that. But at the same time, there is another kind of respect. And I mean real respect. It's not because I need to please you because you're my breadwinner. No, it's because they respect you as a dancer if they know two things. If they know that you're talented, and if they know that you understand the music. These two things, talent and understanding of the music. They know when a dancer understands the music. And they know it in the rehearsal. They don't even need the performance. Just make a rehearsal. And in Cairo, everybody does rehearsals, I think. At least I did. Almost every day before work, we did a small rehearsal or big rehearsal, depending on what was happening. So I had the chance to rehearse with the musicians basically every day. And they can tell if the dancer knows the music. They can tell. They can tell because if they make a mistake, you note the mistake. If someone is off place or playing for too long or not entering in the right moment, you know how to correct, you know how to give them notes, you know how to ask what you want.
Yeah.
Also, what you need, what you want. You know how to recognize an average musician from a bad musician, from an exceptional musician. And when they know that you know the music, then they respect you.
Yes.
This is my experience. And I don't know if, we have loads of dancers listening to us. If other dancers have other experiences, I'm always curious to know, tell me how it was. But from my experience, those two things play a huge role in the relationship between dancer and musicians, talent and knowledge of the music. And that is also true for Egyptian audiences. Egyptian audiences appreciate a talented dancer for obvious reasons, but they appreciate very, very much a dancer who understands the music.
Of course.
And they can tell.
Oh, yeah.
If you're just moving around, doing some exotic moves and showing off, or if you're really working with the music, they can tell. And that changes the way people see you, the way people treat you. It changes the environment of the entire performance. Would you say there are specific skills dancers need to develop nowadays that are not in this description?
I doubt it. I think this one and al-Masoudi are so articulate and so beautiful. I don't think you can add to that. But this is, again, this is the high culture where people spend time to talk about dance and the aesthetic of the dance. And then they went to poem describing a good dancer and poem describing a bad dancer. Praise and satire.
Yes.
With the musicians. And then they tell you, I mean, Masoudi, a very interesting character, talks about the importance of the way the dancer appears. Like she has to have a long neck, nice sideburn, narrow waist. And then he talk about her performance. And she has to be agile and supple, suppleness of the hand, of the arm, the shoulders, the hips, the foot movement, the symmetry. It's beautiful. Beautiful that, over 1,000 years ago, they spent the time to write about it. And the caliph would ask a dancer to talk about his dance. We don't
Really?
see. Oh, yeah. In al-Masoudi, the other one, page 190.
Oh, yes. I'm there. I have it open. The dancer needs to have certain qualities in his or her natural disposition. And then it proceeds to describe natural disposition. He or she must have grace and charm, a good innate sense of rhythm, and the one who seeks to be a dancer should joyfully plan and be creative in his or her dance. Then he talks about physical dispositions, constitution, character, mastery of dance techniques, and dress. He or she should have a long neck and long sideburns, as you were mentioning, coquetry and flirtation. أيوة. A good nature, دم خفيف يعني.
Exactly.
The ability to sway the sides of the body, a narrow waist, sprightliness and agility, good body proportions, floating belts, a circular dress such that the bottom will fly up in a perfect circle while the dancer spins, the ability to control his or her breath and take a rest when needed. patience in enduring the long practice process to reach one's goal, graceful feet, supple fingers, and a mastery of moving the fingers with suppleness, a mastery and creativity in performing the various types of dances, such as the camel and horse dances, supple joints, the ability to make quick turns, the supple sides of the body. Then he goes to add performance. He or she needs much creativity in the performance of the various types of dances and the thorough knowledge and mastery of its techniques. He or she must turn around well while the feet are in control during the rotation and maintain a similar motion in the right and left feet. The setting of the feet on the ground and raising the feet off the ground can be done in two ways. One follows the rhythmic mode, and the other one lags behind it. The one that follows the rhythmic mode is better and more perfect because it relates to love and beauty equally. In the one that lags behind, which is not as perfect as the preceding one, it is better and more perfect for the foot to leave the ground on the rhythmic mode and touch the ground while lagging behind it. It's so detailed.
Amazing, just amazing.
And very practical.
Yes.
Very
yes.
practical.
They know what they're talking about.
It
And
comes from real experience. You know when I noticed that, when he speaks about breathing and the importance of recovering energy when you're tired during a performance, of course I can relate to this because especially when I was performing 1 hour straight, that was the program of my show in Cairo, 1 hour straight, very often alone with the musicians. I did not have dancers with me all the time. And when I did, it was just for opening, folklore. So 1 hour straight is a long time. And you need to learn how to manage many things. One of them, your levels of energy. And how do you do that? He speaks about that here in the book. And he talks about the breath. He talks about the tricks to recover your energy while you're performing. I thought that was so funny.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. And coming from experience, you can tell this was written by people on the job.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's what I like about it.
And it was delivered to the caliph at the palace, because he asked various people about various questions on music and instrument and rhythm. Then he said, now tell us about the dance. So one person, very knowledgeable, started to speak about it. And you get this magnificent speech about it. Yeah. And
I love the mention to the management of energy. I also love the importance given to breathing. And not only in terms of recovering your breath, recovering your energy, breath as a way to put yourself in the mood, breath as a way to become more relaxed, breath as a way to tune into the music, breath as a way to recenter, reground yourself. There are so many subtleties associated with breath and performance. And I really love, again, this is coming from the fact that you can tell that the author knew what he was writing about.
Yeah.
From experience.
Another passage, it said, if you're stuck and you're out of breath, stop and pretend you're fixing your belt.
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Very practical.
Oh, yeah. And then he talks about two things that are really, really important. One is that dance is not easy. It requires a lot of practice and lessons. And also, be happy when you dance and be creative. Don't stick to a choreography. Change it as you dance and be happy when you're creative. That is so important in that passage.
Yes. I think, what he was referring to, again, it's something that is rarely talked about. And it's rarely talked about because it's difficult to put into words. There is a side of performance, and I'm speaking specifically about Egyptian dance, that you cannot learn in a school. And Perhaps I'm even speaking about myself because I have a school and I teach. So, but because I teach and because I have experience in performance and in teaching, I know for a fact there is a lot that we can teach. And then there is a side of a dance performance, just like a musical performance, which nobody can give you, nobody can teach you. You have to, yani, predispose yourself, as you mentioned, to be creative,
Yes.
to be interactive with the music and with the audience and what the mood of that moment is bringing. In other words, work with the unpredictable, work
Yes.
with the mystery, because I don't know how I'm going to feel when I perform tonight. I don't know how the audience will be. I don't know how the musicians will be. Maybe they are in a good mood, bad mood.
Yeah. It changes all the
Somebody
time.
died. I don't
Yeah.
know. I
It
have
changes
to
all the
be
time.
open to work with all of those unpredictable factors,
All the variables. Yeah.
all the variables, and create something fresh on the spot from it. Most dancers are not aware, not even aware they're supposed to do that. And then they are not trained to do that. I mean, because I think, especially in the Western world where we have most of the schools of Egyptian dance, in Egypt you have festivals, but you don't have Egyptian dance schools. You have the Reda troupe, who is following what Mahmoud Reda created decades ago. So they're still doing the program and the pedagogy and the method that Mahmoud created. And it is beautiful and it is rich in its own way. But Raqs al-Sharqi, you don't have Raqs al-Sharqi schools in Egypt, as far as I know. As far as I know. So the thing is, the way dancers are being trained, at least as far as I know, again, and if somebody has a different knowledge, different experience, please let me know, is that we focus a lot on the technique, as we should. We focus a lot on the music, as we should. Perhaps if you are an exceptional teacher, you will also focus on the culture, the language, the mindset, the sensibility, all of those things that we've been mentioning in this conversation. But you will rarely see dancers who are trained to perform and open that creativity box, open that improvisation, working with those variables. Dancers are not trained for it usually. They're not even aware they're supposed to do that. They see performances as exhibitions of a dance choreography, okay? Which is not the same as a performance. An exhibition of a dance choreography is not the same as a dance performance. I can go on stage showing you the choreography showing you the choreography I prepared, and I'm not performing. Performance is alive. Performance has a factor of the moment. Even if I have prepared, I must be open to what's going on in that moment, to create a connection between me, what I have prepared, the music, and the audience. And I love that he mentions that in the book. He mentions that. He does not go into detailed description, but when he talks about creativity on stage and mood and good disposition, that's what he is talking about.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
What do you think about that? Why are we so obsessed with preparation and sticking to the plan? And why are dancers so afraid of being creative, especially on stage and working with the variables? How the audience feels, how the musicians are playing, how the moment is going.
I think you mentioned, I think it's fear. So they want everything to be absolutely in place. But then you can see it's stiff. You know, look at Samia Gamal. She just dances. I love her.
Yes. But also, in defense, now I'm going to play the advocate's devil, or the devil's advocate, the opposite. I'm going to play on the other team. Nowadays, the expectations in relation to Oriental dancers, professional Oriental dancers, are much higher than they were in the 40s, in the 50s. We expect much more from a professional Oriental dancer than we used to expect. That is true of Egypt, and that is true of the Western markets. And again, I'm speaking from experience, having spent almost a decade of my life working in Cairo, and then having worked in the international circuit of festivals, dancing for international audiences, there is a very high expectation. So you're not allowed to be so careless and free like Samia Gamal anymore, because people want to see technique.
It
They
has
want
to be
to see
polished.
skills.
Yeah, very polished. Exactly.
Polished, sophisticated, educated, well prepared. But at the same time, we should not lose sight of the pleasure, of the flow, of the creativity, the spontaneity, also the charisma, playing with our character, which Egyptian dancers like Samia Gamel, Taya Carioca, Naima Akif, the most recent ones, Soher Zeki, Fifi Abdu, Nago Fuad, they knew how to use their charisma. They knew how to use their presence, their personality. They were not afraid from it.
No.
And I think we went overboard in terms of preparation, focus on technique, demanding a lot of knowledge from the dancers. And I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm saying this is great because it elevates the standards of quality.
Yeah.
But at the same time, where is the charisma? Where is the personality? Where is the heart? Where is the flow? Where is the soul? Where is the spontaneity? Where is the sense of humor? Which is so important in Egyptian dance.
Of course.
And people are taking it so seriously, very heavy. يعني حاجة تقيلة قوي. تقيل.
Too much.
I think that perhaps we went overboard in the expectations and I hope one day we will get to the middle term, a sweet spot between education, training, knowledge, all those high expectations and the lightness of Samia Gamal. Something in between.
Wonderful.
Somewhere in between. Now, I had so much more to ask you, but I told you we would go overboard. And it is a disaster because in the podcast, I'm bringing people that I really love as my guests. So what happens is that I plan 1 hour, 1 hour and a half maximum, and then we go overboard all the time.
We have another podcast.
Yes, we will have to gather again to pick your brain and to talk about so much that is going to be left out. Okay, now I want to ask about, again, going back to everything you have learned so far and from where you can see right now, what makes an exceptional musician in the field of Arabic music and what makes an exceptional dancer in the field of Arabic dance? What do you think?
Well, if you have to be trained very well and go beyond the technique. As a student, you learn techniques. As a performer, you have to fly. Don't think of technique anymore. Be spontaneous. Enjoy what you're doing. Very important to enjoy the music you're playing. And always, in my case, I play Tarab music, sort of old classical, Ottoman, Arabic, Syrian classical. But also I love Saidi music. Saidi is just so earthy and so beautiful.
Luxor بلدنا بلد أيوة كده تراري تاتي تراري تراري تاتي يا سعيد يا بوي.
I love it.
هو ده؟
It's so beautiful. And the band, the three oboes and the doof and the double-headed drum, or the rababa group. Simple, beautiful melody goes to the heart immediately. That's so beautiful. And these are very poor people, very humble, and very talented. I love them.
I have a soft spot for Saidi as well. In folklore, it's my favorite music and favorite dance as well, from Tartib. I studied it with Mahmoud. I fell in love with it through the Tartib. I asked Mahmoud to ask me Tartib. Actually, this is how I met Mahmoud Red. I don't know if I ever told you that when I moved to Cairo and I signed my first contract there, I was building the program for the show, and I wanted to have folklore in the program because it was 1 hour long. I said, okay, I have a lot of time to fill. I need folklore, I need variety. And who's better than the father of Egyptian folklore to teach me folklore? So I went to Mahmoud and I asked him to teach me tahtib, to create a tableau for my show. This is how I met Mahmoud, and this is how we started our friendship and our collaboration. And this is how everything grew from tahtib. And there is a quality to it. There is a spirit to tahtib and to Saidi music, which is so tasty. It's my favorite till today.
You have good taste. Mahmoud Reda was here in Canada many years ago, and he told us a story. He wanted to learn tahtib, so he went to Saidi.
Yes.
And Saidi said, we just like this, we don't hit each other.
Yes.
But in the mess, he hit Mahmoud on his head. He said to him, why did you hit me? He said, to know that I am your teacher.
Yes. Mahmoud used to make fun, because another funny story, because of that tableau, I asked him to get me a men's galabeya, a Saidi men galabeya, the same that he wears in a very famous show that is on YouTube. Ya binti beda, ya binti beda. There is a beautiful sequence choreographed by Mahmoud where he's dancing that song. And he's wearing the typical Saidi double galabeya. And it's a white galabeya below and then a black, thicker galabeya above.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's on YouTube, guys. If you go and see Bint Beda by Reda Troupe, you're going to see Mahmoud Reda dancing it with that specific double galabeya. I asked him to get me one. So he hired or he paid the dresser, dressmaker from Balloon Theater, who does the stuff for the Reda Troupe till today. And he asked her to make the same galabeya that he wore for me. But that is a men's galabeya. So the day I showed up with the galabeya at his studio, like a man, dressed like a man, he called me Okhti Susu.
Called you what?
Okhti Susu.
Oh, sweet.
So every time we spoke about Saidi, he made fun of me, of course, because I was wearing the male's clothing and the tableau was with male dancers. So we thought it was very funny that I was dressed like a man, but I, with the face of a girl. He said, you look like me. You look like me. So I was Okhti Susu. Now, we are going to close with a ping pong. That is a fast question and answer. And I'm going to do a little longer ping pong because I really want to pick your brain, and then a couple of recommendations from you. Okay. So are you ready for the ping pong? I want you to give me the first thing that pops into your head. Okay. Are you ready? Favorite word.
Tarab.
Favorite music.
Turas.
Favorite place.
Alexandria, Egypt.
Favorite food.
Fool مدمس. Egyptian beef.
Favorite smell.
Thyme. Za'atar.
Favorite feeling.
Tarab. Joy. Yeah, Tarab is joy and grief. They go together.
One thing all of us can do right now to empower ourselves.
Be nice to people.
Beautiful.
You give love, you get lots of love back.
Yes.
You're nasty, you get nastiness.
In other words, give what you want to receive.
Yes.
It's a very simple equation, and it doesn't go wrong. It's very simple. Give what you wish to receive. My mother told me.
In my case, I give 1, I receive 10. See? So I'm very greedy.
Yes. Now, before we go to our recommendations, we have a new feature in the podcast, which is first, you're going to tell me about a project that excites you, a dream, something you would like to share with us, either something that is happening now or something that you want to create, that you may like to share with us. What is that?
A project I've been working on it for 2 years now. It's theories of rhythm, iqa'at, from the 10th to the 15th century in Arabic and Persian sources. And they have all this circle notation that were invented in the 13th century. And it's just so beautiful, so precise.
Great.
That's my project. That's my joy.
Okay. Now, a new feature in the podcast, which is a question you may like me to answer. One question only. If you could give me one question, ask me anything, what would that be? Don't put me in the hot spot.
No,
I'm kidding.
No.
Ask whatever you want.
Not me. What would you like to see in the dance world? I mean, what do you want to see Egyptian dance become in the dance world, in the world in general?
Okay. So my answer is very simple and very fresh in my mind because I've been working for it since I started. When I fell in love with Egyptian dance, for whatever reason, I immediately recognized its beauty and value. I did not have to go through a phase of ignorance and dancing like Shakira and all that bullshit, pardon my French.
Yes.
I immediately recognized the complexity, the beauty, the magic, and the value of this dance. This is why I moved to Egypt.
Yes.
And this is why I wanted to work there, to really know it from the roots. I did not want to know it superficially. I wanted to know it better than I know myself. This was why I went to Egypt. So from the beginning, my dream was to dignify Egyptian dance.
Fantastic.
And this is, I even get emotional. You're going to make me cry.
No, don't cry. Don't cry.
Because this has been behind everything
that you did. Bravo, bravo. Good for you.
Mm.
You're a real artist, I can see.
Yeah. So I think I answered your question.
You did.
And you made me cry. I told you not to put me in the hot spot. And this is a sensitive subject, because there is so much behind that people don't know, right? Because when you try to dignify the dance and when you push yourself so hard, as I've pushed myself from the beginning, you often find yourself alone and going in directions where others are not seeing it the way you're seeing it and doing it the way you're doing it. And it's a solitary road. But it's one that I'm very proud of and that I work for every day. So I wish to see Egyptian dance respected, understood, dignified, performed and taught with the dignity and the respect it deserves.
Absolutely.
That's my wish.
Good.
Now, last recommendations. And by the way, I am going to share the reference to the book that we read from and to your other books, not only this book, but to your other publications. I'm going to share the links to the books and to your social media so that people can find you in the show notes.
If you go to the website, you find all the books there.
Okay. So we're going to share the link to the website and people can browse, they can find you. Also,
in the website, there is a dancer's corner, a lot of material about dance.
Yes, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's a beautiful part of your website. Now, to close the episode with a golden key, I'm going to ask for a few recommendations. I usually ask for one book, but it can be more than one, aside from your books that you would recommend to dancers. What should they read? Give me a couple, please.
There is a Virginia Danielson book on Om Kolthoum, and there is Jihad Racy book about Tarab. I mean, they're more about music than they are about dance.
Okay. The Om Kolthoum book is A Voice Like Egypt.
Yeah.
The other one about Tarab, what is the title? Because I don't think I know that book. I don't think I know it.
One second.
Oh, yes, of course. I do know it and I have it, of course. Making Music in the Arab World. Yes. The Culture
about
and
Tarab?
Artistry of Tarab. Mm.
Now, to laugh, you have to read this book. Very scandalous.
I think we have to make an episode about that book only. That's what I think. And it's going to be hilarious. Hilarious. Can you please give us the title of your book? That's one of your books. Erotica, Love and Humor in Arabia. Spicy Stories from the Book of Songs by al-Isfahani. Isfahani. Yes. We have to make an episode about that book. Ya Ustaz.
You're
We
going
have to make
laugh
it.
so hard. And women were so strong. Women poet, women musician, tough cookies. Yeah.
Beautiful. Now, a movie you would recommend, and it doesn't have to be related with Egyptian music or dance, just a movie, anyone.
Dahab.
I don't know that movie.
It's a wonderful movie. And the star was an Armenian girl who could dance any type of dance with Anwar Wagdy.
Mm.
It's a magnificent movie, wonderful music, wonderful dancing, very touching.
Beautiful.
Dahab.
Okay.
Dahab. I'm sure it's on YouTube.
Okay. A music you would recommend. What should everyone listen to? If you could only recommend one musical piece, instrumental or with lyrics, doesn't matter.
أنا fintizarak.
أنا fintizarak. Allah.
Gorgeous.
Yes.
Ahmed, of all the composers, got all his inspiration from the Moulid. He will go to the Sufi. He was a Sufi master himself. And he will go to the Moulid, the birthday of the Prophet or the Sufi saints, and listen to a lot of music, then write songs from Kulthum. For me, he's my favorite composer. Yeah, every note is in the right place. Amazing. All from the heart. My skin. All goosebumps.
It's beautiful. One word that uplifts your soul to close this episode.
حب.
Hub. Allah, love. Yes, with eyebrows, always with eyebrows. ما فيش حب من غيره. لازم. Of course, there is no love without eyebrows. مش كده? Real love?
Absolutely. You're good.
We will have a competition of eyebrows very soon. I told you, I am good at it, huh? You're going to be facing a real opponent.
You will beat me, I know.
I will. Thank you so much, Ya Ustaz.
You're welcome. Real pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was a huge pleasure. Once again, what I'm going to do, guys, is aside from sharing the references that you have shared with us of the movie, the music, the books, I am going to share once again the link to your website so people can find you. I'm also going to share the link to the podcast newsletter. I forgot to mention it. I was so excited to have you. I forgot to mention there is a podcast and there is a newsletter in the podcast, and I'm inviting everyone to join it. All the links of the important stuff are in the description box below the video if you're watching this on YouTube, or in the show notes in the audio podcast platforms. Shukran, ya Ustaz, ya Fanan Gamil. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It was a pleasure, and we're gonna meet soon for another episode.
For sure.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Shukran, ya Ustaz.